If I may have your attention, please. At this time, we're going to begin the graveside services here at the cemetery. The following individuals have been selected to act as pallbearers. If I call your name, please join me at the rear of the hearse. E. Whitland, Noam Whitland, Kenny Shack, Ari Shack, Ellie Bernstein, Josh Richmond, and as honorary pallbearers, we would also ask you to join at the back of the hearse Gabby Whitland, Daniel Shack, and Noah Richmond.
Chair that was here. He said there were chairs.
If I may have your attention, please. At this time, we're going to begin the funeral service here at the cemetery for Mr. David L. Bernstein. As we begin the service, I would ask if any of you might have a cell phone or any other noise-making device, please turn them off at this time. Officiating the service here today is Rabbi Yaakov Dvorin.
Before we begin service for Grandpa David Bernstein, David Ben Aaron, I include in this packet of earth in the grave Afar Mina Aretz, soil that was gathered at the base of the Mount of Olives, Har Zesim in Eretz Yisrael, and included in the grave, and then a short explanation, although many of you may already be familiar with this particular tradition. Jewish tradition teaches that at a time of Hashem's choosing on God's calendar, unbeknownst to us, all people who are deemed worthy, whose souls are judged to have been good and pure in this lifetime, will be rewarded with a return to life at a time on the Lord's calendar. We know nothing, we have our theories and beliefs about what that will look like, whether it will be physical like this, where time is relevant, where it be more of an existence that we recognize, or something beyond our understanding, souls or something spiritual. But we hold on to that hope that all people, if deemed to be worthy and good, will return to life. And the return to life begins, according to tradition, in Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, followed by it beginning in Jerusalem, the undivided capital of the Jews. And in Jerusalem, it will begin at Har Zeitim, the Mount of Olives. Spread all over Jerusalem, spread all over Israel, spread all over the world, all those deemed to be worthy. And we include some of the soil from the earliest place of the return to life as a sign of our hope, our belief, and our faithfulness that at a time of God's choosing, family members who are now separated by death will be together once again in what we hope and expect to be a joyful and celebratory family reunion. This time I'm going to offer 3 short excerpts from text, 2 of them from the book of Yeshayahu, the book of Isaiah, 1 from the book of Psalms. While realistically I'm not certain how much comfort there can be here and now, it is the first attempt at bringing some solace to family and to friends in recognizing the plan of the Lord. First from the book of Yeshayahu, from Isaiah. Kol omer kra va'amar ma'ekra, kol basar chatzir v'chol chasto ketzitz asadeh, yavesh chatzir navel tzitz ki ruach Adonai nashva bo, achen chatzir ha'am yavesh chatzir navel tzitz udvar Eloheinu yakum liolam. A voice says, cry out, and I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when a wind of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall endure forevermore. From the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms. Karachem av al banim richem Adonai al Yereav, ki hu yada yitzreinu zachur ki afar anachnu, enosh kechatzir yamav ketzitz asedeh ken yatzitz, ki ruach avrabo ve'einenu, velo yakirenu od mekomo, v'chesed Adonai me'olam v'yad olam al Yereav, v'tzidkaso livnei vanim. Tender as a father is with his children, the Lord is merciful with his worshipers. He knows how we are fashioned. He remembers that we are but dust. The days of human beings are as grass. We flourish as flowers in the field. The wind passes over it, and it is gone, and no one could recognize from where it grew. But the Lord's compassion for his worshipers, his righteousness to children's children remain, age after age, unchanging. the third excerpt from the book of Yeshayahu, Isaiah. While I share this with everyone, I have in mind specifically Grandpa David's children and your spouses and partners. Al tira ki imchani, ani al tishta ki ani alecha, imatzticha af azarticha af temachticha b'min siki. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will sustain you through my power. Family and friends, as hard to believe in one way as it is, we again gather here together to pay final tribute and bid farewell to the departed soul of Mr. David Bernstein, David ben Aaron, who at the age of 91 years was called to his place in the world to come this past Thursday evening, August 17th, the 30th day in the Hebrew month of Menachem Av. In one way, it is unimaginable that we are gathering together once again, not more than 2.5 months after the passing of Grandpa David's beloved wife, partner, and confidant, his beloved Jerry, Zichrona Livracha. But without meaning to minimize the sadness and heartbreak of the very reason we're all here, Grandpa David's final days here in this world, while alive according to medical and physical measurement and detected body vitals, did not include even a slight indication of even the least quality of life. And quality of life was truly the story of Grandpa David Bernstein. He was a fully and totally a chaverman, a personable, pleasant, open, friendly, and engaging gentleman who was loved and adored by everyone he met. He could tell fascinating stories, but could equally listen with great interest and focus in the stories of others. I personally feel an incredible abundance of gratitude to have known, spend time with, and be part of the family and the life of Grandpa David Bernstein. The meaningful and rewarding time I was able to spend with Grandpa David is something for which I will forever be grateful. Anything he believed I brought him by way of companionship, conversation, or camaraderie were dwarfed by the manner in which I received reciprocal joy and pleasure, multiplied by 10 with each visit. We engaged in wide-ranging conversation about a myriad of topics in every visit. Grandpa David was an encyclopedia of knowledge, having facts and information about a remarkably varied and wide-spanning, impressive list of subjects. He could speak with expertise about history, entertainment, the Ritz brothers, I heard about, of course, politics, current events, the news, past and present, religion, and was more than casually familiar with the names of personalities, luminaries, and celebrities, many of whom he knew personally, or with whom he had had some special or intimate interaction. He was extremely proud of his work at the Jewish Federation of Tulsa, the lives he touched and made better through his leadership, his compassion, and his guidance. His pride in his achievements was never a brag or a boast, but rather a true statement of his feeling of personal accomplishment at having made people happier or making their lives better. I'm told that Grandpa David looked forward to my visits and enjoyed them immensely. I hope so. But our time together was truly a two-way street. I couldn't wait for the next time we'd be together, engaging in the lively art of conversation and allowing me to learn so much from such a source of experience and wisdom. Grandpa David was a man among men. He stood tall, literally and figuratively. He took seriously and personally the call to help others, and he did so with tireless energy and an abounding call to fulfill his objective to make the world a better place for others. And I would say, the world is a better place for his having been here, living, loving, and laboring among those he loved and cared for. I have no doubt that Grandpa David, through his incomparable devotion to Grandma Jerry, truly died of a broken heart. He could not live his life without the love of his life. She was more than a wife to him. She was his partner and a life-supportive, life-supplying appendage, a part of him that sustained his life such that without her, he couldn't continue. He was a loving, devoted husband who sets the example for the rest of the world's husbands. In fact, there aren't enough expressions of love, trust, and romance and true partnership to describe the conspicuous love affair and the true love story of the shared life of Grandpa David and Grandma Jerry. The companionship, the friendship, the eternal pool of love that flowed between the two of them was unquestionably inspirational. Their wedding anniversary would have been this past August 15th, in which the two of them would have been married for 69 years. And I believe that the temporary separation between these two loving spouses couldn't continue. They could not be apart. It appears that there in Shamayim, from her heavenly perch in the Olam Shel Nishamot, the world of souls, Grandma Jerry petitioned HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Almighty God, and asked that they be joined together once more in a marital reunion that, while hearts may be breaking here and now in this world, was met with joy and celebration as the two of them, these two lovebirds, have now been reunited. I hope there is some comfort in this notion and in this belief. You all know, as family and friends, that Grandpa David's legacy and his lasting mark on this world is and will continue to be his family. There are not enough words, expressions to talk about the pride, the love he had in family. But I'll allow family to display that themselves. I firmly believe, as do others, there's nothing as genuine, sincere, hearing vivid, descriptive recollections from loving family members, especially at a time like this when we need to say a final goodbye. So we're going to hear from Grandpa David's family members. Before we do, with the Olam here, with all of you as witnesses, Grandpa David, I asked Mechila if I didn't visit as often as I could, as frequently as I should have, if I ever listened with less than full focus. You were, for many and for all of us, a man among men whose goodness, whose authenticity inspired everyone who knew you. May your neshama have shalom and shalva and be allowed to be an inspiration to others. Tehei yishpasacha tzuror b'tzor chayim. We'll hear from family members now. We begin with Grandpa David's son, Jeff.
Because it is our custom not to deliver lengthy or sadness-evoking eulogies on Rosh Chodesh, my remarks will be brief and hopefully uplifting. It was less than 11 weeks ago to the day that my family and many of you were in this exact same location for our mother's levaya. As our parents were married for almost 69 years, it is no surprise at all that our father would join our mother not so soon afterwards, especially considering his final words of, "See you soon, Jerry," immediately after she passed away in our presence. Years ago, when the Tulsa Jewish Federation retired my father from his position as director for the first time, so that they could bring in a younger person, I was one of the people who spoke at his retirement dinner. The theme of my speech was that my father was the matzah man, very humble and missing that one ingredient, ego, which would have caused his self-importance to rise like bread. In fact, more than once, Dad told me that he suffered from the imposter syndrome, which I learned is where a person may be high-performing in external objective ways, but feels like a fraud or a phony doubting his own abilities, which keeps him from not experiencing success internally. I never understood why he felt that way, in light of the fact that he built bridges between the Tulsa Jewish community and other communities of all races, religions, ethnicities, not to mention the long hours he put in serving the Jewish community. He was, in fact, a rock star in Tulsa, without all the trappings that go along with it. Multiple awards were named after him, and we have dozens and dozens of newspaper clippings referencing his good work with people and for people. If I had to pick out one thing which best described the type of person my father was, it would be his belief in Tikkun Olam. He didn't just believe in it, he believed it was everybody's responsibility to actively do it. It is a bit ironic that the Kaddish I will be saying on his behalf eschews an apocalyptic future and instead describes a world which will ultimately experience its final tikkun and ultimate glory. Dad, you fought the good fight your entire life. You taught your children not to see what separates people, but the similarities which unite us. Now your 4 children, your 14 grandchildren, and your 47 and counting great-grandchildren will carry on this same task, and it will serve as your legacy. I will end with a quote from the Nigerian political scientist Kal Ndukwe Kalu, who said, "The things you do for yourself are gone when you are gone, but the things that you do for others remain as your legacy."
Thank you, Jeff. Call now on Grandpa David's daughter, Pam.
Standing up here, I feel like I should be singing a song that I wrote for this occasion, because that is exactly what my father, our father, would be doing. There was rarely a time when he didn't have a song prepared to make the occasion warmer and more loving. He was so good at writing songs for everyone to make them feel special on their day. Today's Akiva's 13th birthday. He'll be a bar mitzvah next weekend. I'm sorry that it fell on this day, but Grandpa he got so much pleasure from hearing you prepare for your bar mitzvah a couple of weeks ago, and he talked to me about it many times. It really meant a lot to him, and he was looking forward about that. So I'm not going to sing the words that I wrote today. However, I am tempted. Our dad had a big life, a life well lived, a life that touched so many, very many people, a life full of stories, countless interesting things that happened to him. Sometimes you would wonder if he was making them up just for your or our entertainment, but he wasn't. He's just led that kind of a life and was interesting to talk to. And when you talked to Dad, he almost made you feel like, the rabbi said, not only was he so very interested in anything you had to say, but he made the conversation fun, like he felt like he had to entertain you. That's just how he was when you talked to him. And that's one of the reasons why everyone always loved him. Even at the nursing home, a terribly difficult year for him and Mom. He endeared himself to the residents and the staff, and we were told over and over how he was their favorite resident and how much they enjoyed time spent with him. I was told just yesterday when we went back to clear his room out, and I quote, "The ambiance has changed without him here, reading his paper at the table and saying hi to everyone and drinking his coffee with his 2 sweet and lows. It's just not the same." What I really want to talk about is the life that the 4 of us had as children growing up in a house with a dad, that wherever you went with him, people shouted, "David!" and wanted to say hi or thank him for something, or to tell us, "Do you know how special your father is?" It's a dad we often saw interviewed on the news and frequently saw his picture in the paper, but a dad who read to us at night, a dad who played baseball games of many kinds, created fun games in the backyard, a dad who taught us Yiddish games through card games and setting the table. We had to say the Yiddish name as we set the pieces down. I will always remember the capital of Pennsylvania because of the hilarious ways he would give us to remember facts. A dad who put Jewish music on after dinner and danced with our mother. Mom and Dad loved to sing together and had many favorites that we sung on our car trips and Sundays around the house. He took us to Shul for junior congregation every Shabbos, So we would develop a love for davening and it would become a part of all of our lives. He was extremely creative. He never let a moment be quiet. He was always engaging us, telling us jokes and stories, making newspaper hats, making up silly songs, helping us with our homework and school projects, teaching us to ride our bikes and drive our cars. But everything Dad did, and he did it in a way that made you feel like there was nowhere else he wanted to be. And he had a way of finding ways for each of us to shine and feel good about ourselves. There was a few years that I was extremely shy and struggling, and he wanted me to experience something that would help me feel more confident. So he took me one summer with him to a Head Start program for underprivileged kids, which was one of the programs he oversaw at that time of his career. Not only did I love my time in the early morning, driving alone with him, sharing donuts, hearing the 70s songs playing in the car, but I loved the whole experience with working so much with children that it shaped my path in several ways. You heard my brother mention rock star. You'll probably hear it again to describe him today. But this was my first real experience at seeing him in his element. We would be in the middle of a park with all of these Head Start children, and children would come running from all over to hug him. Mr. David, Mr. David. And I remember the women who were working, the volunteers, they would light up when they saw him. Mr. B, Mr. B. They just loved him. And I watched my father jump up on a picnic table and lead the children in a silly, crazy song or a game of Simon Says. And I thought, wow, he is everyone's rock star, but he's my dad. The one who shaped me to be a volunteer, to always notice strangers around me who might need a kind word or a hand, and to love my family and spouse as fiercely as he did his. I tried to be silly and creative like he was, to be a nurturer and a worrier. He worried a bit that I was too much of a worrier like him. He taught us our love for Yiddishkeit and family and singing, and he was the best barbecuer around. I think he tried so hard to give us the childhood that he wished he would have had instead of the one that was shaped by war and loss. My siblings and I were so happy to spend these last years of their lives giving him back the nurturing he gave us. We tried our best to make the hardest years that they had a bit joyful, a lot of family, and a lot of love. And I can only imagine that Dad was greeted in Shemayim not only by our mom, who was very impatiently waiting for him. David, what took you so long to get here? But the many friends and loved ones and everyday people through the years whose lives he touched. His stories will live on through his adored grandchildren and great-grandchildren as well. A life well lived indeed. There's so many things we will miss about you, Dad and Mom, and our lives together as your children, but it's time for you to be together in peace. We love you both. I'm sorry I spoke so long, and Dad, I'm sorry that it was such a difficult end, but we loved you, and we will love you forever.
Thank you, Pam. Now call on Grandpa David's daughter, Lori.
One second. I need my real glasses. I can't see the words.
My father was brought up in Paterson, New Jersey, by hardworking parents who owned a grocery store in a non-Jewish section of town. He was a very late addition to the family. When he was born, his brother Paul was 13 and his sister Helen was 11. Dad's home life revolved primarily around his brother and sister since his parents worked very long hours and weren't home much at all. He adored his sister and idolized his brother. Since Dad's father was rarely around, his brother Paul became like a surrogate father to him. According to my father, his brother, a bright, handsome young man, was the apple of his father's eye, and he was treated like a royal prince. When Dad was 12, Paul was serving in the army and fighting overseas in World War II. For the Bernstein family, life as they knew it ceased when they received a telegram that Paul was missing in action in Belgium. Eventually, it was determined that Paul had been killed in the largest and bloodiest single battle fought by the United States in World War II, the Battle of the Bulge. Dad, Helen, and their parents were understandably inconsolable, their grief immeasurable. My dad needed his parents' love and attention more than ever, but they were so emotionally destroyed by Paul's death that they weren't able to validate his feelings and provide him with comfort. The result was that my father felt unworthy and unseen, particularly by his own father, who never really recovered from this terrible blow. Only about 7 years later, his mother was diagnosed with cancer. She was sick for about a year before she died, and it was a source of deep sadness to Dad his whole life through that she never met his wife nor any of their children. In addition, his beloved sister Helen also died from cancer when Dad was still in his 30s. There is no doubt that these early losses played a large part in shaping my father's aspirations and his feelings about himself. After experiencing such adversity, how did Dad grow into the man upon whom an entire Jewish community counted? A man who was asked for help and guidance by people from all different backgrounds. I believe that as a young man, my dad doubted his own worth. After all, how could he ever live up to Paul, no matter how hard he tried? But I suspect that was how he felt. But I suspect that helping others overcome their pain, or helping others get their needs met, helped to heal his own wounds. I believe that he was made more and more whole each time he counseled someone, each time he created an amazing project and saw it through to success, each time he provided financial assistance from a discretionary fund to a person in need. Every act went a little ways towards filling up the holes in his heart left by the untimely deaths of his family. Instead of allowing these losses to drag him down, he used them to uplift others. This should be a lesson to all of us, as we each have our own adversities to overcome in life. Dad, I'll miss and love you forever, but I'm comforted by the fact that you are now out of pain and at peace at your seat in Gan Eden. You are whole again, Shalema, with no impairments to slow you down. You've been reunited with all your beloved family, including Mom. May your neshama soar even higher than the huge imprint and legacy you left here on earth. Yehei Zichro Baruch.
Thank you, Lori. I'll call on Grandpa David's grandson, Daniel, for remarks.
So, as Aunt Lori talked about so beautifully, Grandpa used the adversity in his life. It was really a superpower. It empowered him to help others, giving him a deep well of empathy to draw from. Many of us grandkids, many people here, talked to Grandpa when we had our own personal struggles. But it takes a special person to sit on the phone for hours with a total stranger who's crying for help. And he didn't just do that. He created an entire system of volunteers to do it. They first started in a closet in a hospital. When he started the Mental Health Association, when he worked there, he started this hotline. The first one in the Southwest, they gave him a little space in a room where they were storing TVs they weren't using. That's where they started, with volunteers taking calls from people that just needed someone to talk to. They cries for help. That program, he then helped grow across the entire city as Helpline. And then years later, after the Federation, he waited 2.5 weeks. He said he's not much for hobbies. His hobby is helping people, and you don't retire from that. That was a quote he had. He had a news conference, and he started getting the idea for a helpline across the entire state, which helps millions of people now across the state of Oklahoma, the 211 number that you can call if you need help. And he did all this because he knew that sometimes everyone just needs someone to talk to. And that's just one example of the many, many things that we've all heard about.
Grandpa was executive director of the Mental Health Association.
Grandpa developed the Choice is Yours audio program sold nationally.
Grandpa was executive director of the Community Service Council.
Grandpa was part of strategic planning with the Tulsa Chamber of Commerce.
Grandpa was president of the Tulsa Health and Welfare Association.
Grandpa was Benet and Oona board member and education committee chair.
Grandpa created the Women's Resource Center for victims of spousal abuse and child abuse.
Grandpa was Tulsa World's Man of the Month for development of Tulsa's Crisis Intervention Service.
Grandpa helped Ethiopian Jews come to Israel.
Grandpa received the Tulsa Interfaith Award.
Grandpa received the Oklahoma Human Rights Commission.
Many awards that were named after him are still given to this day. We could talk forever about all of Grandpa's accolades and accomplishments. A few nights ago, I listened to an hour-long interview he gave for Voices of Oklahoma, which was later put into a book. He had the first one that they did with a live audience in the state. It's a beautiful piece. You can just Google David Bernstein, Tulsa. It's one of the first links. In typical fashion, he gave a lot of credit to Grandma Jerry throughout. And no doubt their work to heal the world together was a partnership. It was a team effort. All those nights he spent taking those phone calls, and she took the phone calls when he wasn't there. But of course, their greatest and proudest accomplishment, as he has said in many of these articles I read, was their family. It's us here together, and the stories and the memories we have of Grandpa David that will live on in our hearts. All the super Sundays where we'd play together in the forest preserve, the silly games he'd make up just on the way here as my kids were making up a game naming the things they saw as they drove. I'll never forget, we would visit Tulsa and see fireworks. We'd drive out to see if we could spot fireworks, but I remember much more the game he made up where we memorized the street names on the way. Playing card games in Yiddish, which I learned in that interview was because his grandma would only play card games with him in Yiddish, which is why he would do the same with us. Marching around like Groucho Marx. Of having all your middle school friends, watch at your B'nai Mitzvah as your relatives stand up and sing a parody of a song that they've never heard of at your bar mitzvah, and you love every minute of it. That's pretty unique. I don't know if we're the only grandkids in my family that he told he's a member of a magician society, and that the way he could prove it was because he had 3 dots on his foot. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Or at least a story like that? I'm not going to tell the story about the YMCA and the swimming, but just say years later he reversed that story and would jump into the pool with his clothes on. But as the years went on, we learned our family wasn't the only one with these stories. Mom, as you said, walking around Tulsa with him, seeing kids run up to us and say, "You're David Bernstein's grandkid," Jenny said, that made us feel like celebrities. And we realized that he didn't belong just to us. He touched so many people's lives. So yes, we'll remember the Grandpa David, the big fun character, always quickest with the joke, wearing funky socks, teaching us how to guess what number I'm thinking. But we're also lucky that we got to share him with the world.
Daniel. For anyone else who will be speaking, you can hear that there's a problem with the sound system. You'll need to speak up to be heard, especially over the frequently flying planes. But please be intentional about speaking in an extra loud voice so everyone can hear. Call now on Grandpa David's grandson, Noah.
Nice to see everyone here under these circumstances, but very nice to be with everybody in one area. Can everyone hear me? Yes? All right.
No, louder, Noah.
Louder, okay, yes, Aunt Lori. As a grandson, someone that didn't grow up seeing you each week, each time together and story told was impactful, special, and memorable. When I think of Grandpa, I think of values and characteristics that define him. Those that are in my blood and soul and everyone else sitting here today. A few of those is what I would like to share today. Less about memories, but more about values and characteristics that I feel are instilled in all of us, as Daniel alluded to a lot of beautiful ones as well. His first one, of course, is his wittiness and his storytelling along with his listening, which everyone has mentioned, but it is such a true and strong characteristic that Grandpa always had with him. You make everyone around you laugh. You can be at the table with a hot cup of coffee, sharing a story with a joke, and all eyes and ears are on you. Everyone wanted to sit around you, Grandpa. Everyone wanted to listen to you. Everyone wanted to talk to you. And that is something that will always stay with me. The biggest one that has shaped me and that I feel is most carried on in my own self is the ability of giving with a helping hand and having a warm heart, because that is who you always were to me. That is the superhero that I saw you as. The work that you did in the community service sector that we all know, both religious and secular, the health sector, the immigration sector, is what I've always been most proud of calling you my grandfather. I speak your name to so many humans I meet around the world. Last week I was just in the Bahamas with a family from Oklahoma, and it gave me such joy to be able to talk about my family from Oklahoma, to talk about you in a place that I had never been before and got to share you with me while I was there. It's extremely special for me. Yes, I am Jewish and raised Jewish, but I have always battled with not knowing if or where I belong. What I did know is that I felt connected to every religion and culture, and I believe that is because of you. My want to help those around me and less fortunate is because of you. You never saw color, you never saw nationality, you never saw religion. You just saw a fellow human that could use help, and you did your part to do so. The story of when you were on a drive, were going to get food at a drive-in, with your coworker, a black foreman that you hired, and not getting served. You hired him because he was the best worker you found. You being from the East Coast and naive about segregation was just out having an honest meal with the best worker and friend that you had there at the time. You did things with purity, you did them with spirit, and you did them with joy. And that, once again, is why you were a superhero to me and so many other people. Hard, honest working. Well, there we go. Hard, honest working. If not everyone has listened to Voices of Oklahoma, as we've all mentioned already now, please do, to learn about his professional past, to see where he came from and what he became. From sorrow to hero, from helping at his father's fruit stand to post-college work at the car upholstery business, to leadership in mental and Jewish Federation. He was a leader, a problem solver, and an honest and hard worker. The most important one to me, and what many others here, of course, have alluded to, is his affinity of love and for family. In a large family of 14 cousins, my brother and sister and I grew up in a home with a loving mother. Often just you by yourself, Mom, with not anyone else in that house as well. And I say this because I always wanted to see the love that Grandma and Grandpa shared together for you, Mom, and you became that loving person for all of us. You were a mother and you were a father for us as well. And Grandma and Grandpa had such a romantic life together of always holding hands together. Your pet names for Grandma, the never letting go of her hand, the eyes always on each other, the always giving credit to her success, to your success because of her. And just 2 or 3 days ago, celebrating your 69th anniversary. It is a kind of love I dream of and traits of how to treat your loved ones that stick with me. You will do anything for your grandkids as well. You are so proud of all of us. Every time visiting you in Park Plaza, you excitingly introduce your own children and grandchildren to the guests at the table, to the aides that help you. Hey, this is my grandson Noah. He's a chef and swims with sharks. And everyone would just look up. And you were just so happy to have family around you. I am sorry for not calling you more and sharing more stories over the phone. It is something I will always regret, but I enjoyed every time I got to speak with you, every single time. Please know I always spoke about you and continue to. Know you have impacted my life and thousands walking this earth. I love what I believe to be a hardworking and righteous life because of you, Grandpa David. I love you, and I'm happy that you get to hold Grandma's hand once again. And bless you, Grandpa David. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Now I'll call on Grandpa David's granddaughter, Rachel.
There's a Gemara that relates a story of 2 rabbis taking leave of each other. Can you hear me? Okay. And one of them asked the other for a blessing. The rabbi responded with a parable, of course. It was comparable to a man walking through a desert who was hungry, tired, and thirsty. He found a tree whose fruits were sweet, whose shade was pleasant, and a stream of water flowed beneath it. The man ate those fruits, drank that water, and sat in the shade of the tree. And when he was going to part from the tree, he asked it, Elon, Elon, bama avarechacha. Tree, with what shall I bless you? For your fruits to be sweet, they already are. For your shade to be pleasant, it already is. For a stream of water to flow beneath you, there already is one. Rather, I will bless you that it should be God's will that all saplings they plant from you be like you. And the rabbi explained, so it is with you, that you already have Torah, wealth, and children. Rather, may it be God's will that your offspring shall be like you. As a child, in the middle of the 14 grandchildren, I always felt so tiny and short. I still feel that way. And I always felt like Grandpa was larger than life. Booming voice, taller than can be believed, a hug that encompassed my whole being, confidence and fearlessness to do anything from jump into a pool in full attire, including shoes, or get up in front of all of his children and grandchildren's friends and communities and sing a dance, one of his original songs for a simcha. And that was just through my eyes as a child. Even as an adult, I will always view Grandpa's presence like that of a massive tree. One of those trees where you can see the top of it from a block over, and you can also see the thick roots threading in and out of the ground as far as you can look. He gifted us with a sense of identity by creating a foundation of values, morals, and ideals in each of his descendants. He valued and respected each human being, saw the divinity and worth in each one. He could start a conversation with anyone, anywhere, and so can many of his grandchildren today. He had pride in his Judaism, the Jewish people, and so much pride in his descendants and a huge love for his family. He created special Bernstein customs and traditions like those neighborhood walks where we copied whatever he did, including the Groucho Marx walk or pretending to dribble a basketball into someone else's driveway. He was a part of our Pesach Seder, our Thanksgiving meals, our Hanukkah get-togethers, and I must mention again because it's too special, all of those songs by all of our simchas. I was never planning on listing all of his accomplishments or all of his attributes. I don't think I could. I couldn't. But I wanted to share with all of you this picture that I have of Grandpa, and to say that we benefited from him, from his values and love and attention and investment. We literally exist because of him and Grandma. And now I'm left with this feeling of wanting to do something for Grandpa. What can I do to ever repay him for what he has given me, us, to mark this time and make sure I never forget? But then it's already there. Because Grandpa and Grandma started this beautiful family and instilled excellent values and gifted us with rich traditions. And what I can do, what we all can do, is to live our lives with those values, emulate them, and then their legacy grows exponentially, their effect incalculable and endless. May we all merit bringing nachas to our beloved grandparents and to our Creator. Tehei nishmasam tzrua b'tzrua hachaim.
Thank you, Rachel. I'll call on Grandpa David's grandson, Gabi, the bracha achrita.
I ask you to bear with me for some final thoughts, which are very difficult for me. Probably why I didn't become a pulpit rabbi. And as Uncle Jeff said, I'll be loud. As Uncle Jeff said, in deference for Rosh Chodesh, I'm going to try to be a little more forward thinking in my brief remarks, and in terms of an eye towards the future and Grandpa's legacy as opposed to the past. I want to talk about two grandpas. And I think we've heard about them already. But when I think about Grandpa, I really think about him in two ways. I think about Grandpa 1 and Grandpa 2. Grandpa 1 is the grandpa of my childhood. I think all of our childhoods. He's Grandpa the legend, and Grandpa the hero, the celebrity, and as we say nowadays, the rock star. And he was in every way. He was always larger than life, and just couldn't be outdone. And I think it's Grandpa the patriarch that in such an unusual and unique way laid the foundation that serves us so well today. And that's the Grandpa that inspired us in a certain way, I think, as younger children and young adults when we thought about him. And there's always such a sense of pride to have such a person to be an important part of your life. You know, we've all had experiences where we were able to experience that ourselves. I went after graduate school. I made an impromptu decision to go spend a few days with them, just myself. Grandpa was still working at Federation at the time, but in the last years, and it was the tail end. But it was like walking with a celebrity. You couldn't go two steps. Whether you went to a bowling alley, we were at Federation, we were meeting the imam and the police, whoever it was, whatever we were doing, you couldn't go two steps without someone kissing him on the cheek and connecting with him in some way. You know, that's how he was. It was just so much and so much depth. And it was so broad and so big. I think that's Grandpa 1, and I think none of us would be where we are today without Grandpa 1. But I think that none of us as well would be where we are tomorrow without Grandpa 2. When I think about Grandpa 1, I've felt actually with even a sense of pain is an amazing, beautiful gathering of friends and family, of people we all know from different parts of our lives. As I always say, and I try to explain this to people, I grew up in Hollywood, Florida. I live in Orlando, but I'm sort of from Chicago. This funeral should be bigger. It should be so much bigger. Of course, it can't be. That's the reward that you have for living a long life. But when I come here, I close my eyes. And I think about an area filled with no space to move. Of people of all walks of life. People of all kinds of people. There's people down on their luck. People wearing clothes or that you might be uncomfortable smelling. People, rabbis and Chabadsters and priests and kids and just all kinds of people. You know, when I close my eyes and I think about where we are today, I feel them with me. I feel in my heart that somehow, somewhere, they feel it too. Look at the football field, the people that were touched by Grandpa A, Grandpa 1. But it's so important to think about Grandpa 2. And Grandpa 2 is Grandpa the human we heard about as well. It was not so large. Grandpa who was at times had his own struggles and his own ups and downs and his own pain and sadness and his own challenges. They have to go together because you can't have Grandpa 1 without Grandpa 2. You can't have Grandpa 2 without Grandpa 1. And if you only have number 1, if you only have the celebrity and the rock star, the superhero, then we can't bring it home with us. And I know that even though if you listen to the interview, he says something which is very true and real in a certain way, and reflects on his self-deprecating nature at times. He says, everything I did for myself. But really, everything he did, it was really for everyone else. And it's the same person that could inspire every one of us, children and grandchildren. We're all so different on a different path, but he meant the world to each of us, and we meant the world to him. And that's how he interacted with every cashier, and every camp counselor, and every person who worked with him and for him. It was always the same way. He only saw people. He never saw anything else. He did not know how to meet a person who he couldn't love. It was never about the award. It was never about the program. That's why he said that I can never be a good businessman. It's because I couldn't fire anyone or tell anyone off. And that's the truth of it. It was always about people. It was always about individuals. He just couldn't give up on any person. So I ask you all today, and I ask myself today, I think as a final tribute and a final memory, to put both of those grandpas together and take ourselves with our own challenges, our own struggles and limitations, and take a piece of Grandpa home with us. Hold it in our hearts, and remember that no matter what we go through, no matter where we come from, no matter where our limitations lie, we can always do big things, and we can always make a difference in the lives of the people around us. Yay, nishmaso tzor b'tzor chaim, bilam abis lanetzach, umach Hashem dima mi'al kol panim, yehi zechro baruch. May his Grandpa's memory be blessed for all eternity, and may it lie within each one of us.
Thank you, Gabi. Everyone who spoke, who all spoke descriptively, articulately, from the heart. You truly painted a picture. We ask Kadosh Baruch Hu, Almighty God, to send a measure of healing and comfort to Grandpa David's family members, friends, all those who were touched by him in his lifetime, all those whose lives are better because of him and his efforts, to his devoted, loving wife, partner, confidant of almost 69 years, Jerry Zichrona Livracha, his loving children, Lori and Fred, Pam and Carrie, Jeff and Miriam, Beth, their devoted partner Les, to his cherished 14 grandchildren, to his precious 47 great-grandchildren, to cousins, nieces, nephews, other family members, friends, and all those who were touched by Grandpa David in his lifetime, those who knew and loved him. His lives were made better by him. We say, Tehei Nishma Sot Tzuror B'Tzur Chayim. May his dear departed soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. Together we say, Amen. As alluded to earlier, this being Rosh Chodesh, there are some subtle differences, mostly omissions, a few that you may have noticed already. One of the portions that has a leniency that will include is the Mizmor LeDavid, which I will do again first in the Hebrew, followed by the English translation. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echzor, binos tesheyar bitzeni, al meimenu choshen aleini. Nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'maglei tzedek, oy leman shemo, gam ki elech begeitz almoves, lo irara, ki ata imadi, shivtecha, umishantecha, shivtecha, umishantecha, hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, taroch lefanai shulchan, neged tzarei, dishantav Hashem en roshi, dishantav Hashem en roshi, dishantav Hashem en roshi, kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed, yirdefuni kol yemei chayoi, v'shavti beveis Adonai, v'shavti beveis Hashem, yorech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on paths of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You set a table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forevermore. We don't say the Kel Molei Rachamim. We don't say Tzadok Hadin on a Rosh Chodesh. The halacha is clear. The sentiments remain. God has a plan. We don't get it. We do our best to accept it with as much of full heart and faithfulness as we can. And we do our best to approach the notion that the world is a better place for Grandpa David having been here, and to try to be grateful for the years of his life and not to focus on the loss, but so much on his presence and what he contributed to the world. You're undoubtedly familiar with the tradition of family members or friends coming forward to put in shovel full of earth. 3, 4, 5, there is no minimum, there's no maximum, and you probably already know the custom of not handing the shovel to the next person. I've heard all sorts of traditions and things that have come over the years. There's really one specific reason. If this is the chesed shel emes we believe it to be, the highest form of kindness, for which here and now Grandpa David cannot pay you back for this act of kindness, allowing his neshama to ascend into Shemaim, to the heavens, as we lovingly inter his body to the world, to the earth, from which biblically, according to Torah, we all come. Earth we come, earth we return. He can't pay you back, so you come forward with the most decent, most complete, and most sincere intentions of doing this act of kindness without any payback or expectation of reciprocity. Every person will want to be credited, as it were, with this act of kindness individually. If you forget and you do the polite thing just automatically, I want to assure you you've not committed a grievous sin. Please put the shovel back on the ground or in the earth, and we will continue until we have completed the, at least Kisui Aron, covering up the visible portion of the Aron, and then at the very end we'll conclude with Kaddish and with the Shura. Begin with family first.
They're going to back up the truck with more earth.
Carly's not gonna be. Carly.
want to mention, as those of you who were at the unfortunate time to be at the Levaya for Grandma Jerry, I said at that time, as I'll repeat here and now, everything was been done with kavod, with honor, with derech eretz, with respect, kedas v'din, according to the strictest and the most accepted manner that halacha would expect and demand, on top of which that which was done by yad. Nothing relying on others or machinery, that Grandpa David deserved through his efforts that have been talked about in such descriptive manner. He deserved the same efforts on his behalf. In life, there are no entitlements. That's something a person believes they have coming to them. But what is deserved is what other people believe is coming to that person. Everything was done kedas v'din, bayad, with the highest levels of respect and dignity. There's a question on the appropriate Kaddish. I've spoken to the family about it. The Kaddish that will be said is the Kaddish Yichadata. That's said on the cemetery grounds. And when the families finish saying Kaddish, at that time we'll form a shura. If there is anybody who has an obligation as a chiyuv now for purposes of Kaddish, there is no restriction on your joining in a quiet, respectful manner if you are at a point in Avelus or some reason by which you are obligated to say Kaddish.
Yiskadal v'yiskadash shmei rabah.
Amen.
Ba'alamadihu asid lachadasa v'lahachaya meisaya ulasaka yashon lachaya alma. V'lebivnei karta di Yerushalem v'lashach lala hechle begava. V'leme'akar palchana nuchra'a min ar'a v'la'asava palchana dishmaya la'asrei. V'yamlich kudsha brichu b'malchusei v'korei v'chayechon uv'mechon uv'chaye d'chol beis Yisrael bagala uv'izman kari v'imru. Amen.
Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam u'lomei olmayo.
Yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yispa'ar v'yisramam v'yisnasei v'yishadar v'yisaleh v'yishalal shmei d'kudsha brichu.
Brichu.
Le'ela min kol birchasa v'shirasa tushbachasa v'nechamasa da'amiram yelama v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen. Just a moment, we're going to form a shura. We'll be directed as to where and how to stand. In the meantime, our tefillos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu judge Grandpa David's neshama to be good and pure, to allow him to rest in peace together with Grandma Jerry, the highest levels of heaven, where he'll continue to do his good work, and those neshamos who need his intervention, his support, his guidance and wisdom. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless his incredible family, his true legacy, that which he started as a patriarch, unlike many, many others. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless your family with comfort, support, and healing that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can provide. We'll form a shura at this time.
If I could ask all of you that are not immediate family members to come in this direction. We're going to form a column, 2 lines facing one another. The women on one side and the men on the other, please. Thank you.